Well, this is about the sixth time that I've heard recording in progress, and about the sixth time that I've heard welcome back to Zoom. Today has been a day I've recorded this message to you so many times that it's gotten so I don't believe that it's going to have any audio, but I just tested it and it seems like it does. Today is a special day. Not only am I going to talk about one of my very favorite age groups, but I'm also going to tell you that it is a hunter's moon, which means that you who are aware of that would know this is going to be the most spectacular full moon of our fall season. And I have many hunters in my life. I have a farm with my sister down in Carolina, and we have a hunt club there who hunts her land. And then very good friends of mine are hunters. Sometimes I want to say, I hope little Bambi survives, but I understand. I understand that hunters are sort of obsessed with hunting, actually. Um, so a hunter's moon this morning. I'm actually literally recording the morning that you're getting this. This is 2 o'clock on the 20th in the morning. I would like to talk about the names that they give our various generations. We started doing this fairly early on, and I'm going to start with the silent generation. That generation is just the one preceding the baby boomers. And while I've always considered myself a boomer, I am not a baby boomer. I'm a part of the silent generation. I'm a little too young to be a baby boomer. The baby boomers are born in 1946 and 1964. And that group, which is really the one I identify with, the silent generation, are those kids who went through the Depression with their parents. But I came in on the very end of that, and it was actually in the celebration time that I got there. And so it wasn't really, it didn't affect me. The silent generation did not. The activity of the baby boomers, the God is Dead movement, the hippie movement, the beatnik movement, the Bob Dylan, Joan Baez, and then much later, the Beatles coming in and wowing all of the younger boomers. Definitely uh, gave something for the next generation to rebel against. The boomers had rebelled against the establishment of the silence, and the Gen X, which is that next generation, came in with a rebellion against some of their parents too. They, in some ways, seem to be a little Gen X, maybe a little cynical in some ways. You're probably a Gen X full of joy, so I won't make a category out of that. But just Gen X was just generally a little reactive and cynical. I guess that the baby boomers felt they had such high ideals. The next group is called the Xennials, and they come after the Gen X, and then underneath them are millennials, and those are the folks that are now well in their 40s. Gen X, those people are well into their 50s and going on into their 60s. My Gen Z is the one I want to talk about today, and that's our up and coming generation. It's very interesting. The teenagers that I have that I work with in that organization at William at University of Richmond come because I'm on a list of people who work with young people. And so recently I found myself getting attracted to that. I have I have more young people in my practice today than I've had in a long time because I've always said it was my preference to work with the people in the second half of their life, which makes sense. But it hasn't always worked out that way. So uh, I would like to talk with the young people to say that today the topic is hey to Generation Z. And by Carrie Newman, LCSW, psychotherapist. So you are the future. As a group, you want to know the purpose of almost everything you encounter. What is the purpose of this? My purpose right now is to say hello and also to ask you a few questions and to make a few comments about you as a group as I see you in my counseling. My teen clients belong to Gen Z. One of your most outstanding characteristics is your absolute insistence on what? Your smartphones. You are known for the number of media videos you watch in a week, and some researchers, and I documented this, have said you watch up to 68 per day. Now, you'll have to tell me if that's true for some of you. You pride yourself in what you reveal and what you do not reveal. And I have learned that. I've learned that the way of your dealing with therapists is to decide what you're going to tell and what you're not going to tell. And in a way, you are a team player, but you don't like having bosses. And you really want to work around people who consider you an equal. And, you know, that may be one of your greatest strengths and your greatest contributions to our world today is to work in a less of a hierarchy. The hierarchies can sometimes really turn people off. You like to shop online rather than brick and mortar, most of you. Many of you know far more about marginal things than any of your relatives would imagine. You keep up with farmercbd.com and you pride yourself in your knowledge. I have noticed that religion matters very little to many of you. It's something that relates specifically to Christianity. The Eastern religions are still sort of popular, but and the spiritual place in your heart is there. You know it's there, but it's hard for you to want to deal with Christianity. One of the young women that I work with has said that she has absolutely no interest in Christianity. She says she was dropped off at church all during her life, and her family never got involved in any spiritual kind of life. I have another one of you who is 16 now, who walks very tall, very prideful, and says he is very happy that he can have a personal relationship with spirit. So there are some who have discovered that. In fact, your generation, Generation Z, has walked right into what is called a Jesus culture. It's I suppose you might call it a movement, but it's really more of a culture. Um, it's where the industry has moved from cutthroat gospel music to and competition and big business, just like popular music, secular music. It's moved to a stage of praise and genuine lyrics that have to do with worship, and or at least it appears to have. And so you are walking in on that part. Actually, I walked in on that part too. Music. I've always enjoyed music as a way of connecting with my spirit. And so we'll see. We'll see how that affects anybody. Uh, the idea of picking a therapist for psychotherapy is interesting to me because many of you have picked an older therapist, assuming that there may be a potential for some wisdom. And even though you seem to like your younger therapist, you don't seem to necessarily navigate toward those younger ones as much as we did when we were growing up. But if you had a therapist who was over 30 when you were my age and when you were young, you were dealing with a really out of touch person. So I guess that we did not come in on the digital age. We were still in the analog age, which you don't know a thing about probably. But it's really wonderful analog is. Then I want to just mention one last thing that I'm really thrilled about, and that is that in your uh, group, your Z group, many gangster rappers are getting tired of encouraging drop-back rhymes, and they're getting tired of putting women down. And so a lot of the teachings of their grandmothers, and that would be people in more my generation than that generation X, uh, who may be their parents. Um, their teachings of the grandmothers seem to come through right now. It's a much more spiritual teaching than the teaching maybe of their mothers. Although there are many mothers who are involved in the spirituality of their Gen Z, and many fathers who are equally involved. Now, finally, I'd like to say that if I had to pick one word that I would say is characteristic and will be characteristic of your generation is suddenly. I'll say that again, suddenly. And I find that working with my teens and early 20s right now, that there are just things that just happen just like that suddenly. Just all of a sudden, things are one way and then 180 degrees in another way. Sometimes they come back 360. But it's interesting because it is something that I see as a sort of a characteristic of the group is that the changes can be very sudden changes. And so if you seem like you're stuck in a rut, uh, don't be surprised if suddenly you decide to shift the gears and change in another direction. So I'll stop there and just welcome you and say that I think you're a fabulous generation and you're going to make smashing adults. Thank you.